So if I'm looking to continue my weight loss, but I'm under my TDEE, what should I do?
So the idea is going to be sort of you could call it a refeed, you could call it a reverse diet or a recovery diet. That depends on, how periodized, how planned out.
How you came into it.
Yeah, how you began your plan. A reverse diet is going to be more of a gradual reintroduction of calories versus a recovery diet is going to be a little bit of a faster track. So if I had to kind of prescribe, most people tend to fall into the category of a reverse diet, whereas a recovery diet might be more so for someone who is, for example, in a physique competition or something like that.
Yeah, I think a good way for people to look at this is kind of the way I put it. Like, you were either planned or you were not planned. Yeah. So if you're that person that came into the front of the year with nothing but, just piss and vinegar, and you were just going for it, and you felt like you had some self-discipline behind you, and you stopped drinking a little bit, that's great, but that's not well planned. All right. So versus the person that came into the beginning of the year, understanding what their TDEE was, understanding what their macro numbers are, understanding how they may be cycling calories and cycling macros throughout the weeks and the months in order to get to a specific point, understanding that they were going to be working towards a caloric deficit and at some point would need to return to maintenance. If you didn't do that work, then what you're going to be doing is a reverse diet, right? Mm-hmm. If you did do that work, you're going to be doing what we call a recovery diet. And so that's the way to kind of look at it. The recovery diet is a planned return based on a planned going into a deficit, and a reverse diet is somebody that would be somebody that was like under their caloric maintenance or let's just say in a deficit for, let's say, weeks to maybe a couple of months. That person that was in that deficit or severely under eating for months to years, that person needs to be on a recovery diet. And that's where you're going, like, that's the depends piece. Like, it depends on those, basically whatever you categorize yourself there, that will dictate the type of diet or reverse or recovery diet you'll be going into.
I think when you meant a reverse diet for someone who's been under eating, significantly under eating.
Did I mix that out? Mm-hmm. Oh, fuck me. So, yeah, reverse diet, months to years would be on a reverse diet, and weeks to months would be somebody on a recovery diet. So just to be clear, my apologies. So how do we do that, right? So and what are the differences? So what's the difference between like a recovery and a reverse diet with regard to, let's say, putting calories back in to achieve caloric maintenance or above?
The reverse diet, as we mentioned, is going to be a little more of a gradual reintroduction versus the recovery diet might be a shorter and more rapid reintroduction of calories. So for someone who's on a reverse diet, maybe something like introducing maybe 50 to 100 calories extra per week. Mm-hmm. So that can be broken down into per day, 20, 25 extra calories per day. And then we're going to gradually increase week by week over a period of maybe, up to 6 to 8 weeks, versus a recovery diet might be as short as a couple of weeks and a much more rapid reintroduction of calories, 200, 300 calories a week, something like that.
Yeah, so things to be aware of. One, the gradual is in an effort to, there's a few things there. If you're finding, let's just say your caloric maintenance is you've done the calculation, you figured out it's 2,000 calories, but you're only eating 1,000 calories. To try to put in 1,000 calories to come back to you, it would be, that's abusive to your body. I mean, first off, you may be able to do that on 1 or 2 days, but your body is not going to receive that very well, right?
You're not going to be able to sustain it.
I was going to say, yeah.
Probably not.
Gastrointestinally.
Yep. Yeah, and the other part about it is your body is not at a point now where it has upregulated to deal with that increased expenditure increased intake, and it's likely that your body will store that or want to store that as fat tissue, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do. So we're doing this in a very gradual basis. Now, you said like it could be like 6 to 8 weeks. This is going to be dependent on how far or how deep you are into that deficit or how far you are behind in with regard to your total daily needs. So, it could be longer. If you're way under, again, like if you're supposed to be at 2,500 and you're sitting at around 1,000 with your daily intake now, this could take months.
And yeah, you've done quite a number on your metabolism. It's going to take some time. I think that it always comes back to setting the expectation that these things are going to take time. It's not going to happen just like that.
Yeah, so you want to do this slowly over time, and then on the recovery, the recovery diet, this is somebody whose body's probably going to be a little bit more responsive to the additional calories. We're probably really going to like these calories. The pitfalls of putting too much in too fast are a bit, again, when I say pitfalls, it's not necessarily a negative thing, particularly if you're on a recovery diet, that you're going to be putting on some body fat. It's just at what rate are you going to be putting it on? So, you can stretch the recovery diet a little longer if you wanted to maybe minimize how much body fat you're putting back on. It's just that's going to take you that much longer to get back to maintenance. So performance might suffer a little bit. You might not be feeling as great as soon than if you took it a little faster. But in both cases, again, we're going back to like our presenting things in triplicates here. One of three things is going to happen, right? So if I'm on this reverse diet right now, I recognize, I am way under eating, right? And I start to put these calories back in. One of three things basically can happen. One is you start putting these calories back in, you feel fucking fantastic, right? Like I
have energy now.
You got energy now. Like you go to bed at night and your head hits the pillow and you sleep and your performance starts to go up and you're starting to notice your clothes are feeling a little different. You're actually losing a little body weight as you're maybe putting on a little bit of muscle. That can happen, right? That can happen. And you're on the right track. Everything, keep doing that, right? And recheck in. Here's what else can happen. You can feel really great. Your performance can go up, right? The head hits the pillow at night and you go to sleep and everything's great. However, the weight is not changing on the scale, right? You're maintaining the same amount of weight. But all the other factors, including like your biofeedback, that being how good you feel, not just what you can measure in terms of performance, is good. You're just not maybe losing any weight or dropping any body fat on the scale. That's another thing that can happen. And the third thing that can happen is you can actually have all of those things and still put on a little bit of body fat. That is very possible, right? That is very possible. So those are the impacts or the expected results that you should have. There are adjustments that can be made based on where you maybe fall into those categories. But when you're on this type of thing, that's going to happen. Same with the recovery diet. The person that's on the recovery diet might have a little bit more insight to what they should or shouldn't do in order to mitigate some of those, maybe the unwanted impacts. But the metabolism, your body is your body, and it's going to respond or in whatever way it needs to or wants to, whether you like it or not. So, but it's important, going back to expectations, that you understand what this process could look like.
Mm-hmm.